Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by State Representative and Castle Rock City Council member Max Brooks. Representative Brooks, as a freshman legislator, earned the Distinguished Liberty Warrior designation from Liberty Scorecard this year. Well, Representative Brooks, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate the ability to be here.
Well, on June 24th, Douglas County voters will decide whether to adopt home rule for the county. Since 1970, Colorado counties have been able to adopt a home rule charter, with Weld County being the first to do so. So, Representative Brooks, what would home rule mean for Douglas County?
Gosh, at this point, I think it would mean everything, honestly. I mean, for anybody who follows state legislature, right, you know already how much of a mess things are up at the state capitol. Okay, everything that they feel that needs to be done, it's easier to do instead of their own districts to do it at the state level because they have the math to be able to do it. That sort of unchecked, balance is just not good for Colorado. So I people ask me all the time. They say, "Hey, how'd your first year go?" And I tell them, I said, "Look, I love the work. I love being there, but I'm so glad that we're not in session because when we are in session, we are irreparably harming the state of Colorado, and we see that reflected in their attempts, the Democrats' attempts to be able to say, you know what, we've got the answers here about how Douglas County or Weld County or any county, any of the 64 counties in Colorado, we've got the answers here about how they should run their municipalities and their counties rather than them having to worry about it. Maybe we should just do away with all local elected officials, right? And just let the state legislature run things because apparently they've got it all figured out. This will be a protection, Brandon, as you have in Weld County. This will be a protection that will allow us a platform from which to fight back against government overreach.
Yeah, that gives me a lot of hope, honestly, and a lot of optimism. This idea of home rule. We have so many municipalities, over 100 of them across Colorado, who have already adopted a home rule charter.
So,
And to have Douglas County added to the limited number of counties, I think would be an amazing thing. And Representative, you're in a unique position, you as well as the other elected legislators representing Douglas County, to really see how horrible it is in Denver and how out of control these legislators are. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling. When I talk to people about what happens at the legislature this year and even last year, people can hardly believe it. They say that there's no way. It can't be that crazy. It can't be that extreme. And it is. And so for the opportunity for people to be able to say, hey, let's slow things down a little bit. Let's give us here in our own communities the power to make our own decisions and not
right.
have somebody hundreds of miles away or 50 miles, whatever, however far they are, making decisions for us in our community. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you bet it does. I mean, look at it this way. The governor of Colorado is hardly a moderate, right? I mean, he's a very progressive guy, but yet he ends up vetoing a lot of the progressive party bills because they're too outrageous for even him. That'll tell you right there that yes, everything that we hear about how horrible things are at the state capitol, it's probably even worse. And so having this protection is very, very valuable because you're right. I mean, the folks in Denver, anybody at the state capitol, representatives from Boulder, from Aurora, from that area, they don't understand what it's like to live in Douglas County. Can you even imagine what how off base they are with how life is in some of the truly even more rural counties in our state? I mean, these laws that are being passed are just absolutely killing rural Colorado.
That's a great point, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I see it, watch it, I track it, talk to people all across the state, and exactly, Denver Democrats mostly, but legislators in general out of the Denver metro area are really causing so much harm, as you said, to rural communities, and just trying to overturn this way of life that's been there for generations, and it's so sad to see. But Representative Brooks, can you give us any specific examples of what home rule would mean? Any specific areas or certain policies or anything that the county would have more control over now or with home rule than they do now?
Sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Right off the bat for me, it's zoning control is a huge issue. Uh, when I first started on Castle Rock Town Council, I was so very happy to be representing the voters of Castle Rock, to be representing the community in which I love. It became very distressing to me very early to see what state legislature then was doing. They were trying for a blanket, basically pulling and removing all local zoning control across the state. Now, that measure failed. What they did instead is they broke it apart into various pieces to say, look, we have a housing shortage. We have an affordable housing shortage in Colorado. I don't disagree with them. But a lot of that is due to the construction defect law that we have had, to where we're not allowing people to get into that very entry level, able to be able to build equity, towards purchasing a home. We're not even allowing them to do that because we have allowed for the construction defect law to stay on the books for as long as it has. That did get addressed this last session to a small degree, so we're making progress. So while I agree that affordable housing is something that we need to look at, simply saying that building more and building more multifamily housing is going to be the solution is a deeply flawed model, right? That's what Colorado is trying to push down from the governor's office and from the state legislature. They think that simply by having more multifamily housing, that is going to solve the affordable housing crisis in Colorado. Simply not the case. So one example that came forward this last legislative session was House Bill 251169. That was cutely named YIGBY, standing for Yes in God's Backyard. So what that sought to do was to remove all zoning from religious land and from educational land. So if there is a church like there was here in Castle Rock that owns a beautiful parcel of land, and they decide that they want to go ahead and build multifamily housing, there would have been nothing in the way to stop that, right? Because they want to be able to remove that zoning control. That backs right up to unincorporated Douglas County. So this could happen in Douglas County very easily as well. Any land that's owned by the school district, which is in horrible financial shape, don't even get me going on that, right? They could then sell to the highest bidder. What you would end up with, Brandon, is essentially this: multifamily housing in a single family neighborhood. People complain all the time, and rightfully so, about some of the development that's going on. They don't like to see that the open space has been sold and that it's being developed. They complain about how that's going to impact their home values. Think for a second about how devastating that would be to have multifamily housing smack dab in the middle of a single family neighborhood. That would be truly devastating to home values. So that's just one little example. Local zoning is a big one. The ability to be able to approach law enforcement in a manner that is reflective of the county that we and the sheriff that we charge with those duties, that's huge too. Being able to say, look, your government overreach, state of Colorado, is going too far, and we are going to push back. Keep in mind, there are 6 municipalities that recently filed a lawsuit against Governor Jared Polis and the state of Colorado over infringement over their municipal, Colorado constitutionally protected home rule. Arvada, Aurora, kind of a big town, Glendale, Glenwood Springs, Westminster, and Lafayette. Primarily on a couple of measures that were passed last legislative session. And that was the transit-oriented community, but then also removing all restrictions on occupancy limits, right? Most municipalities will say you can only have X number of unrelated family members living in a dwelling, while Colorado wanted to remove this. We don't necessarily have a problem with this in Castle Rock, or we would have joined the lawsuit too, because what they've done is they've said, you know what, you can have unlimited number of unrelated family members living in one dwelling. Some of these municipalities have finally stood up to say, you know what, this is finally going too far. And perhaps home rule wouldn't have been as much of a discussion if the legislature were not as lopsided as it is right now. But perhaps maybe if they just behaved a little better and they didn't think that they could just strip away the right for communities to decide how they want to live. 6 of those communities have pushed back and said, that's too much. We're going to sue Colorado. So it's not just a Douglas County piece. I would expect, honestly, a number of counties to be following suit very soon.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that lawsuit because it really demonstrates that this is not a left-right issue, right? I mean, we
That's
have
right.
these Democrat-controlled blue cities like Arvada and others that are suing the governor, suing the state of Colorado, because it's really about this idea of this top-down, centralized control of our communities versus the people in our communities making our own decisions and really choosing how we're going to develop, how we're going to zone, how we're going to choose to live. And
Yeah,
ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And I think that's one of the biggest aspects to the home rule debate is just this idea of, yeah, we don't need this centralized control of these people messing with how our communities are built, trying to change our neighborhoods. And especially with, as you mentioned, the zoning, this mass transit corridors they're trying to put in, this forced high density housing all across the state. I mean, we see where this is going. It's not hyperbole to say it's similar to like a 15-minute city idea where the governor, I mean, that was the big theme last year in the 2024 legislative session to build, to offer the carrot of extra funding for municipalities that come up with these little transit zones and these
hmm,
plans with this high density housing along, RTD lines. And then, of course, the stick of, hey, we're going to restrict your funding. We're not going to give you the taxpayer money that you're due if you don't go along with our little schemes to redesign your entire community to how we want it. I mean, that's the complete opposite of a liberty or a free state. We should have people in our at the most local level possible being able to make those decisions and come up with a system that works because we live here,
that's right.
and the decisions should be left up to us. So I think there's so many reasons why people in Douglas County should vote for home rule. And like you said, I think this could be a sign of things to come because for a long time now, people have said, "Well, what can we do? What can we do to push back against the craziness in Denver? What can we do to push back against the legislature, the governor, and these other people?" Well, I think a lot of it comes down to this idea of decentralizing that political power and saying, "Well, what can we do?" And it's constitutional in Colorado to be able to pull back some of that power from the state and give it back to our local communities. I think it's this is the path forward, folks.
And you bring up a very good point there about centralization of power. That this actually removes power from even the county commissioners. There has been a little bit of a lot of misinformation out there about how this is some way of being able for the commissioners to decide how they're reshaping. No, not at all. First of all, it's happening across the state because people do recognize the clear and present danger that state legislature brings to our doorstep every day that we're in session. But beyond that, I mean, really, where does the power belong? The power belongs in the hands of the voters, the hands of the people. That's the only place that we should have the power centralized. This right now, we have a three-person commission. If one commissioner decided that they wanted to sell public land, they wanted to sell open space for whatever reason, they've got to convince one other person to vote yes. Well, what we're asking for is we're asking for voters to vote yes first on the special election. Vote yes, choose the 21 members, and to be fair, I am on the ballot as a candidate for to serve on the commission for home rule charter. Choose those people that you know will represent you the right way. That charter commission will create a charter. There will be public meetings throughout the entire process. Public input will be taken at minimum of 3 meetings. We will then review that, take it to the public, and then the public will then have a chance to vote yes or no on the final product in November. So even if we miss and we don't end up coming up with something that the Douglas County residents want to see, well then vote no at that time. But I'm telling you that we could put in, and I am very interested in doing so, putting in mechanisms to say, look, this needs to go to a vote of the people. No commissioner, no body of commissioners, whether it's just two or if it takes more, if we expand the bench of commissioners, nobody at the commissioner level should have the power to sell open space. That is one of the very specific reasons that people love Douglas County, why they have moved here. It pops up time and time again in the surveys that Douglas County residents take. They love their open space. Where should that power be? It should be in the hands of the people. There should never be a time that the commissioners are able to sell land without it going to a vote of the public. So this whole idea that it's trying to consolidate power at the commissioner level is absolutely just just false. It's a false narrative. This will put hands back or power back in the hands of the voters where it belongs.
Oh, that's interesting. I was going to ask you a little bit about that process. So, here at the end of the month in June, the voters will have basically two major issues to decide: yes or no on going forward with this home rule commission type of process, and then also who to put on this
That's right.
committee to build this home rule charter. And then, like you said, in November, that answers one of my other questions too, because a lot of people are out there saying, well, why not wait till November? Why go through this big cost and expense to create a special election here in June? That's costing a lot of money. Why not wait to put out November? Well, because you need to set the stage for November so you can have
Right.
that final question asked at that general election when there's going to be bigger voter turnout. I mean, that's at least how I see it. So that definitely answers a couple of my questions there.
Well, then also then it would allow us to be able to put this into effect January 1, 2026, before the next legislative session. So that's a big piece of it that I think people are missing. Let me tell you something. If I'll put it this way, if it, and by the way, 1169 is that's a the whole removal of zoning for religious land and educational land. That is a governor bill, right? Now he found his Democrat prime sponsors to run it, but the governor said at the end of the session that he was very disappointed that that didn't pass. It died on the Senate calendar, by the way. So good job, Senate. At least you did something. I can say that because I'm a House rep, right? So we always give senators a hard time. They're usually taking a nap over there. So it's good for them to wake up and do some work every once in a while, or in this case, just push this thing off the calendar so it never saw the light of day. Governor is very disappointed by that. He wants that to come back. He has said it will come back. He has 1 year left, right? So you know that it will come back. How how do you think people will feel, voters would feel, if after the $500,000 for the special election was spent, that we were able to block a multifamily development going into a single family home? Do you think then the people that live in that area that would have been impacted, I bet you they would come out and say, well, you know what? In retrospect, that $500,000 was actually very well spent, because they could probably lose a couple of $100,000 home value just on one home in the neighborhood. So let's kind of keep this in perspective, right? The legislature has put us in a position where we need to act now, because we know that there are going to be bills that will be coming back, right? And we don't have any idea about the nonsense that they're cooking up right now. The things that we know, though, that we would like to be able to fight back against. We've got to have that protection in place before this next legislative session.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like a worthwhile investment to protect your community. I mean, what's that worth? I mean, like you said, this is people's homes you're talking about,
Right.
places that, people are bought, expecting to spend the rest of their lives in, to raise their families in, where they're building their businesses, where they're putting
Mm-hmm.
down their roots. I mean, that's definitely worth fighting for, that's for sure. And it seems like this home rule idea will definitely go a long way towards fighting for that.
Yeah.
Uh, c-
Yeah.
can you explain a little bit? So, so say voters say yes at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
month here, then certain people are picked as well during this election. And then what's that process like? I heard that it's 60 days or so for kind of this committee to get together, put this home rule charter together, and get it kind of prepped and ready for the voters in November. Is that right?
I think that's fair. I believe that August 12th is a deadline that we're really trying to hit, to make sure that we have something ready to go to the ballot. We want to be able to have public input. We want to be able to have those public meetings. So we'll get started right away. And you better believe that we'll start with, it's kind of a template. What exists in Weld and Pitkin counties, to kind of look to say, hey, what do we not need to recreate here, right? How can we craft this to best reflect the needs of Douglas County, and perhaps reflect the needs that have changed since the creation of those two charters, since those were put into place. So we're not exactly starting from scratch here, but yes, there will be a lot of hours put into it. Fortunately, I'll tell you, the Douglas County GOP has endorsed. They interviewed as many candidates that were willing to be interviewed. Some of the Democrats chose not to be interviewed, not strangely, right? Which is funny. There are detractors. There are those that are saying no, vote no on home rule, that are running to be on the charter commission. So choose wisely, folks. The Douglas County GOP has a list of endorsed candidates. Many of these endorsed candidates have served in one capacity or another as an elected official, or are currently serving the county, from the county treasurer to the county assessor. We've got former mayor of Castle Rock, former state senators, House reps, current House rep. So my point is that people that have been involved in the community for a while, that understand what some of the challenges are right now, so we'll be able to hit the ground running. And then also, I think there's only maybe one or two people on this list of endorsed candidates that I don't have on speed dial on my phone already. So these are folks that we communicate, we work together already on various issues. We work very well together. We'll be able to sit down and get to work right away for Douglas County. And keep in mind, this is the time that I have a little bit more time outside of the Legislative Audit Committee, the Statutory Committee during the interim that I'm still a part of. We have the time to be able to dedicate to this, and I will sit down and dedicate as many hours as possible or as needed to make sure that we're doing this the right way.
I appreciate the background, appreciate the forethought and the foresight towards this process. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of preparation, a lot of plans in place, a lot of people with a lot of experience who are involved in this, who will be able to make the best use of the time to build this charter and present that best product to the voters, really, by November.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And keep in mind that we've talked a little bit about law enforcement. We've talked a little bit about local zoning, but they're in the Colorado Constitution. There are four areas really that allow the home rule charter to be able to impact explicit statutory authority. That's items like finances, taxes, public land, parks, conservation, land acquisition, planning, zoning. Underneath the implied exemptions, those are matters that aren't necessarily identified as a state concern. What I worry about is that, just like the safety clause that gets put onto every single bill at the state capitol, I worry that the Democrats are going to start to put, oh, this is a matter of state concern in every single bill they pass to try to get around home rule exemption. That'll be a separate fight that we'll have to wage, obviously. But then discretionary authority, this is where they can home rule can step in where it's not explicitly stated in statute. Talk about like homeless camps, how we handle open space. But make no mistake, this is going to impact areas like that have been big flashpoints this last legislative season with parental rights, right, property rights, whether or not we're going to accept any sort of DEI policies, whether we're going to allow unions, that we don't have to accept state collective bargaining agreements. That's huge because they've tried that in Douglas County here already. School safety, public safety. We could even address perhaps an issue of constitutional carry. Whether or not we choose to cooperate with ICE. These are all items that I would anticipate the citizens of Douglas County to present to the Charter Commission as items that they would like to see addressed and discussed and considered for inclusion in this charter. That's the exciting thing. We can do that.
Yeah, that is very exciting. Well, you mentioned earlier misconception that people have. Are there any other misconceptions about home rule and what that would mean for the county that maybe need to be addressed?
You know, uh, to be fair, yes. It has never been said by me, but somewhere along the line, apparently somebody said, or someone thought they heard somebody say that this makes us somehow bulletproof, that it wraps the county in Teflon, right? That this allows us to pick and choose what we're able to do, and that it's basically an easy button to fix what happens coming out of the state legislature. Not exactly true. This does give us standing. That is the important thing to understand. It gives us standing. It gives us a platform from which to fight if we choose to fight, or if we choose to say, you know what, this is where we don't have to abide by this maximum occupancy law. We are going to say that in unincorporated, and keep in mind, Highlands Ranch is unincorporated Douglas County, right? All the municipalities are already under municipal home rule. I will lock arms all day long with the county if we need to make a legal fight, because it's nice to have that older sibling that with deeper pockets on her side, right? But Highlands Ranch is unincorporated Douglas County, so you think about all of the negative impacts that could be brought to Highlands Ranch from state legislature and what can be protected under Douglas County home rule. That's huge. It doesn't make us bulletproof, but it provides that level from which to be able to push back. And I'll tell you that here in Douglas County, they expect us to fight. Our constituency expects us not to just roll over. I understand that we are facing a horribly imbalanced legislative, future. With the math the way it is, 43 to 22. That's horrible. People think I'm nuts for wanting to go up there, but I'll tell you, you know, folks here expect to have elected officials that are willing to go fight. Same thing with this. It doesn't mean we're going to pick every fight. It doesn't mean that we're going to win every fight. But darn it, it does mean that we're going to do everything we can to ensure our way of life and to ensure our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness the way that we see fit here in Douglas County, right? It gives us that ability to do that.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm inspired. I'm excited. I'm really hopeful. Wish you and the rest of Douglas County the best of luck for the June 24th election. Um, One last question here. How can people
So,
find out more information? Where should they go? I'll post any links, like you said, to the endorsed candidates list. But where else can people find out more information?
great question, Brandon. Thank you for asking. Because one of the other pieces that has been kind of thrown around there as misconception is that this has been done behind closed doors. The county attorney has had. I just earlier this week was at a meeting. It was his 20th presentation. There were dozens of people there that wanted to learn about home rule. Dozens of good citizens that wanted to be informed. That was his 20th presentation. So hardly has been conducted in a vacuum. His presentation, by the way, is on the county website, which is just simply douglas.co.us. That's going to be the best place of, best source of information. douglas.co.us. You can find Q&As there. You can find the county presentation there. And you can also find a link there to sign up for a informational kind of a Q&A, which will be held on June 17th, coming up on Tuesday, a Q&A on this. And even if you miss it, I know it'll be recorded. You can go back and watch it later. So that is the best resource for people to be able to get informed with the facts, not fear.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate your time, Representative. Look forward to talking to you again. I'd love to talk to you also about the legislative session and kind of what your experience was that first year, and I'd love to hear that. I'm sure there's some very interesting stories, and your experience down there of what happened. I'd love to hear that. So, hope to talk to you again soon. But really appreciate you taking the time. Best wishes and good luck.
Thanks so much to you. Thank you so much for helping us get the word out, Brandon. And I look forward to being able to chat with you again. Let's do that.
Perfect. All right. Take care, sir.
Thank you, sir.